Although the first 262 airframe took to the air powered by a piston engine in 1941, it was only in March of the following year that the modified first prototype, fitted with prop and BMW jet engines, flew. With the rollout of the third prototype, the V3, came the first 262 to be fitted with more powerful alternative Junkers Jumo jet engines. Due to the need to employ a hard runway, the 262 was transferred to Leipheim for testing, and it was there on the 18th of July 1942 that the first 262 to take to the air powered by jet engines alone made its first flight. Framed by the wing of a Gigant glider, the V3 moved out on the runway to begin its takeoff run. At the controls was Messerschmitt's veteran test pilot Fritz Wendel. Uncertain as to whether the tail could raise itself off the runway, Wendel gently tapped the brakes, forcing the rear of the fuselage to rise. Within seconds, the 262 was airborne. On landing, the aircraft spewed out a lot of smoke, which appeared more dramatic than in reality it was. Although a number of small problems were discovered, the 262 was held to be generally satisfactory. Over the next few months, the wing was modified to give the 262 its characteristic constant sweepback. Prompted by the enthusiastic reports of one of his pilots, Adolf Galland flew the fourth prototype himself in March 1943. His reaction was ecstatic, like I was being pushed by an angel. In consequence, he recommended that all other fighter projects be cancelled and production concentrated on the FW-190 and the Me-262 alone. Galland's wishes in this matter could not be accommodated so easily. In November, following a demonstration, Hitler ordered that not only should the aircraft be given the highest priority, but that it should be built not as a fighter, but as a bomber. Goering had assured him it could be equipped to carry bombs. He also demanded it be available to contest the expected Allied landings in Europe. Messerschmitt was unable, however, to surmount the technical difficulties with both airframe and engine in order to get the 262 in production either as a fighter or as a bomber in any quantity by June 1944. The latter began to leave the production lines in July and entered service with KG-51, thereafter named Commando Schenk, and first saw action over northwestern France in August 1944. The bomber variant was named Stormbird to distinguish it from the fighter version, which was christened the Swallow. Two 551-pound or a single 1,102-pound bomb could be carried on under fuselage racks, whilst it retained the nose armament of four 30mm cannon. Notwithstanding Hitler's own insistence and the politicking from other persons also demanding that the type be produced as a Blitz bomber, the principal concern of many in the Luftwaffe was to see the 262 in service as a fighter. First deliveries of the Swallow actually preceded those of the bomber variant, with the 262 test detachment, under its first commander Hauptmann Thierfelder, making its first operational sorties in April 1944. With his death, leadership of the detachment was passed by Galland to Major Walter Nowotny, the ace of the Eastern Front, after whom the unit now became named. It was a 262 from Commando Nowotny that was employed in the making of this training film for new pilots converting to the type. This was very necessary because the 262 required a different approach than when handling a piston engine type, and the technical superiority of the jet did not automatically confer itself on the pilot. Although a high-speed aircraft, it accelerated slowly due to the still temperamental nature of the Jumo engines. Throttles had to be opened slowly, otherwise the pilot could find the engine suffering a compressor stall, burnt-out turbines, or total failure. Once in the air, he could not use the plane as just a faster 109 or 190. Dogfighting was not possible in the 262 by virtue of its large turning radius, which meant that a Mustang, Thunderbolt, Spitfire or Tempest could turn inside it. Diving attacks from the rear to gain speed would allow 262 formations to easily penetrate an enemy fighter screen and allow them to hit the big US bombers employing their heavy nose armament. Having already referred in passing to the problems being experienced by Junkers and Messerschmitt with the UMO engines, it is necessary to go into the background in more detail to gain a clearer understanding of the problems besetting both companies in attempting to get the ME-262 into service in large numbers. Although the importance of the ME-262 to the Luftwaffe's future had been recognised as early as June 2, 1943, with the go-ahead to release the type for production as a fighter, this decision had taken no real account of the severe technical problems still facing the manufacturers of the aircraft and its engines. Some measure of these can be gained by noting that 6 months after this decision had been taken, only a further 23 ME-262 airframes had been manufactured by Messerschmitt, and even these were not flying due to a lack of engines. Junkers was having very great problems overcoming just the technical difficulties with the engines without even beginning to grapple with those entailed in gearing up to produce them in the quantities needed to power not just the ME-262 but also the Arado 234 bomber. At the heart of Junkers' problems with its jet engine lay those generated by the declining war situation facing Germany, over which it, as a company, had no control and could not surmount. The UMO 004 jet engine was, at this time, the most advanced of its type in the world. As a state-of-the-art power plant, it required precision manufacturing of parts made from specialized and valuable metals, able to withstand the greater stresses and temperatures associated with jet engines. These included nickel and chromium, which were no longer obtainable by the Reich in 1944. In their place, Junkers had to utilize inferior materials in the manufacture of vital parts, or use what little store of strategic metals they possessed in a far more frugal fashion. For example, under normal circumstances, the combustion chamber would have been constructed of aluminium, but with the shortage of this vital metal, Junkers had to manufacture the same part from steel and impart a thin sprayed layer of aluminium to the inside surface to help it withstand the heat. In consequence, the 004 engine possessed a service life of barely 10 hours before it seized up. Problems with the compression flow resulted in compressor stalls. The fuel supply to the engines was also extremely difficult to regulate. If fuel was released into the turbine too quickly by the pilot, it would induce a flameout. These numerous problems thus lay at the heart of the inability of the Luftwaffe to deploy the ME-262 in the desired numbers. Hitler's insistence that the aircraft be used as a bomber and not as a fighter is therefore seen in its proper perspective as being incidental to this central problem and not a cause of it. While German ingenuity had produced an extremely advanced aircraft, her war industry was unable to overcome the debilitating problems associated with the manufacture of its power plant that was the prerequisite to its deployment in the reliable numbers necessary to ensure its success in the air war over Germany.